Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sprint 197 review. This was a normal 2-week sprint, so let's get started. I'll start with the overview, Jeffrey on the UI, Adam with providers, Joe on the platform, and Keenan with the API. As you can see, this was a pretty normal sprint. PRs merged. The sprint was up a little bit due to the Ruby 3 change that ended up creating PRs in every single repo in order to upgrade Ruby. And Joe will probably talk about that on his slide. And over to Jeffrey for the UI.
Hi. In the sprint, 12 PRs got merged into the UI Classic repo, out of which 4 are bugs, 5 are enhancements, and few others. I can explain about them in the following slides. There was an error while trying to access the service request page. David had fixed this by adding a keyword string named MIQ provision in the application helper to fix this. Next slide. Under the compute infrastructure host list page, the power options were enabled even though there were no items were selected. Enabled, and the on-run parameters were added to the host senders button helper methods to fix this issue. Next slide. Tooltips were different for the native console button in the infrastructure provided. The label was corrected from cloud providers to the infrastructure providers. Next slide. Under cloud compute instances images, the compare selected VM buttons does not process the last selected items from the tree. Also, the last item from the tree was not getting selected for comparison. So a rework at the logic of the selected item array was done to fix this issue. Next slide. The management console button was added under the access on infrastructure VMs by Adam. Next slide. While trying to edit a catalog item, there were few. This is regarding a conversion of data tables inside the catalog under the catalog tabs. Just a second. A chart was added for the fixed versus not fixed even by storage systems from the AutoST team. The managed quota form was converted from Angular to React by David. This page was also converted from HTML to React by Gilbert. Next slide. Yeah, over to Adam.
Thanks, Jeffrey. So this sprint, the HMC team fixed an issue with the Red Hat CoreOS operating system name matching. If the operating system name was just CoreOS, it was picking up the operating system type correctly. But if it was Red Hat CoreOS, it was matching Red Hat Enterprise Linux first and showing the wrong icon. So they got that fixed up. We also went through and added subclasses for the snapshot model under all the providers so that we can add provider specifics into some of the subclasses. For Azure, we fixed a bug where targeted refresh of resources by ref directly from other regions was creating the records in the database when a full refresh wouldn't. Essentially what was happening was an event catcher would raise events across all the regions. And so there would be, you'd have VMs being created during a targeted refresh and then being deleted when you did a full refresh. So now we're skipping any which are not in the region that the provider is supposed to be managing. And in future sprints, we'll fix the event catcher to not raise events outside of the region that it's managing. But this is at least a quick fix to prevent records from being created when they shouldn't be. Coming out of that, we also cleaned up the gather data in this region method, which was sort of a catch-all, how to collect data, but turned out to just was a switch that wasn't bringing any code duplication reduction, and so it was easier to just call the methods directly. Next slide. Lots for HMC. So now they're checking to see if a host is managed before performing the operation so that they won't fail. Later on, the button will actually be disabled. They upgraded to the 0.14.0 HMC SDK, which allowed them to fix a bug where hosts which were disconnected were causing the refresh to fail. The management console button was added to the HMC provider and also to the VM dashboards, which is what was using the management console, which was added in the UI slides earlier that Jeffrey talked about. They improved the operating system parser to match the OpenShift Red Hat CoreOS hosts better. This is also what led them to put that PR into Core. They added a quick PR for backport to handle disconnected hosts better, and a setting to control the length of the HMC timeout. This is a quick fix to fix the release branches, but they had a better using a new improved API in the 0.14.0 release. So that'll be cleaner going forward. And they also are now collecting physical volumes from the BIOS, which are the VMs exposing the storages. Next slide. For Power VC, they added VM console support for VMs. And in IBM Terraform, they added an endpoint to store the URL that is what's used to open the CAM UI. Since the endpoint name for the CAM UI can be modified by the user, it has to be able to be changed in the endpoint record. It can't just be derived from the base URL. For VMware, we added a setting which allows us to enable and disable the non-Rails event catcher worker, which was merged in the previous sprint. And we also fixed provisioning from a linked clone snapshot. The EMS ref failure was caused by the snapshot class only existing in core, and we didn't have our mixin, which builds the EMS ref object. This is also a quick fix for backport, and then it was fixed properly as part of the snapshot subclass rework. And that is it for providers. Over to Joe.
Okay, for core enhancements, Adam made some progress towards the non-Rails workers by allowing the application worker code to define and start a non-Rails worker through a proc or Lambda. Next, Nasser added the ManageIQ messaging ready service and script, whose responsibility is to check if Kafka is ready. Next, I added a bunch of changes to all of our test suite in the GitHub Actions to test with Ruby 2.7 and 3.0. I also changed the core ManageIQ appliances codified in RPM build to now use Ruby 3. So we should now be building those with Ruby 3. Next, Jason avoided installing some weak dependencies and appliances in a similar way he had done previously for Codified. Next, Nasser added a Zookeeper network policy. Jason updated the Ansible Python virtual environment dependencies. And Jason also removed logging to files in production as it duplicates journal delogging, and Codified uses standard app. Next slide. For core bugs, Jason excluded the EPEL next release RPM to fix an issue where newer versions of packages were being installed and were causing the wrong psutil version for some of our Ansible work. Nasser fixed the default Kafka secret. And as Adam previously mentioned, debird 1 fixed the operating system detection of Red Hat COS as a core OS. And finally, I fixed some database failover issues with no standby and to allow the ManageIQ DB ready to restart services. Next to Keenan for API.
Not much on the API this front. I'm part of Joe's changes to get us up to the latest version of Ruby. We do have some minor changes there, but besides that, no real changes on the API. On to Jason.
All right, and that's it for the Sprint 197 review. The next Sprint 198 review will be on October 19th at the usual place and time. And I want to thank all the presenters today, thank all the contributors to Manage IQ, and thank all the users opening discussions. Have a great day, everyone.